Hi guys, my name is Mark McAdam, and we've got my colleague you can see probably Ian Perrier.
Hello there.
We're both sort of geography teachers at Queen Elizabeth and have been for several years now. I think we've got a good number of years between us, Ian.
I think we certainly have, yes.
Yeah.
We've got an even older colleague as well who's even more experienced than we are.
Yeah. What we're doing is we'll just sort of wait for people to join, and I'll give a sort of bit of a brief overview of the course and say a little bit about what I teach in first year, and then I'll pass over to Ian, and Ian will talk a little bit about his units, and then we'll be sort of open to questions, and we'll try and answer as many questions as we possibly can, guys, and hopefully the technology works well, and it's all good. I don't know whether you've got anything just to add there, Ian, or...
I was going to say just towards the end, we'll give you a little bit of a heads up about how you can find some more information out about geography, if we've inspired you to do so, hopefully. And also, if you haven't applied to QE yet, then we'll give you some information about how you can do that as well.
Okay then, guys. So in terms of geography, obviously I'm a bit biased. Really great subject, very contemporary. We've got sort of two sort of separate halves really that you'll probably be familiar with from GCSE. We've got physical geography and human geography, and they split equally, 50%, 50%. And then the third element of the course is coursework. Geography is a subject that you will be able to produce an independent investigation, and that is worth 20%. Okay, so you have two exams at the end of 2 years, one human exam and one physical exam, and then you also have your coursework, which contributes to that final grade. Okay, so in terms of the course, that's the sort of setup. I'll talk a little bit about the unit that I teach in first year, and then Ian will sort of talk about his units as well. First year, we generally teach the urban side of the course, urban geography, which is a human unit. Ian teaches place, and we also do coasts as well. So that's the first year, plus a bit of field work. We'll talk a little bit about what we do in second year a little bit later. So in terms of the urban environments, we tend to start off with the urban because you're familiar with it from GCSE, and that makes that transition a little bit easier. We do sort of land use and patterns of urban land use in urban areas. We look at mega cities and global patterns of urbanization. Then we move on to social and economic issues, looking at sort of processes such as deindustrialization and how they have influenced and impacted urban areas like sort of Teesside. And then we move on to environmental issues in urban areas, as well as urban microclimate. Okay. And so that's basically sort of the setup and the unit that I teach in the first year. I'll pass over to Ian, and then we'll sort of have a look at questions.
Sure. I teach the coasts unit at the start of the first year. And again, a little bit like the urban, we put it at the beginning of the course because it offers a little bit of familiarity with what you might well have done at GCSE. Now, you don't actually have to have done GCSE geography in order to come and do it at A-level at QE. But what we're looking for particularly are sort of things like 4s in English, 4s in maths, to make sure that, you know, you've got the good understanding that you're going to need there to succeed. But as I say, the reason we put coasts at the start is because probably if you have done GCSE, which a lot of people have, then you'll have some familiarity with the landform and the sorts of processes that shape them. So things like the sort of different weathering and erosion forms, mass movement, there'll certainly be new processes that you'll find out about. And we're not just interested in what do they do at the coast, but also sort of how important are they all in relation to each other. So we're interested in these sort of high energy coastlines where you get lots of sort of quite spectacular erosional features, but also, you know, your quieter depositional coastal landforms as well, sort of what's going on there in addition to that as well. Obviously, coasts affect people. People affect coasts as well. At the moment, perhaps the big thing that's having an impact is sea level change. And, you know, we need to know what's happening in relation to that. But there are actually places where the land's rising as well as the sea level. So to what extent do they balance each other out? And how do we then sort of go on and protect against those threats of flooding and erosion that can happen at coastal sort of areas? Now, That's a physical geography unit. And what we actually tend to do is we teach a couple of lessons of coasts and a couple of lessons of urban each week in the first term or so, because we think that if we do it like that, then it makes life a little bit more interesting, it's a little bit more varied, and it means that you get a good balance of your physical and your human geography as we go along. So, we do tend to mix things up a bit to try and make life sort of more interesting. I also teach a unit in the first year, which is called Changing Places. It's a human geography unit, and it's all about different locations and how they sort of relate to the people who live there, and what the people who live there think about them. It's also about the representation of those places. So, it might seem strange to talk about maybe comedians who've come from a particular location, and, does their humor affect, is it sort of affected by where they've come from? The importance of accents and things like that. And, what does appear on TV and what doesn't, and what's in sort of marketing information and might actually make people think, a certain opinion perhaps about a place. So Changing Place is quite a different unit to what you've done at GCSE. We also do study two locations as part of that. One is Darlington, as a relatively familiar place, but the other one is over in the Lake District, which is actually where we go for field work in the first year, which I think Mark will just say a little bit about now.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about fieldwork. There's a couple of questions just sort of coming in there that sort of we'll answer. The board that we do is AQA. So yeah, that's the board that we follow. And there's a question there about sort of styles of questions. It's a variety of styles of questions, just like GCSE. You usually start off with 4-mark sort of knowledge-based questions. Then there's an analytical question where you can get a range of different geographical data, presentations, and you have to analyze and say what you see, kind of thing. And then there are sort of longer based questions, 9 marks and 20-mark questions, which are sort of more essay based, but more evaluative. So you're arguing and debating using evidence-based information, sort of real life case study information to back up what you're sort of saying. So a variety of different types of questions. Okay. In terms of fieldwork, I think that's what you mentioned there, Ian. We do sort of a range of fieldwork in the first year. The bulk of our fieldwork is done in the first year. We do sort of a day's fieldwork in October time, just a little bit of local fieldwork with a focus on the urban environments. So we do a CBD, sort of town centre survey. We do a residential survey and look at different housing types and environmental quality. So we get you into sort of doing a bit of field work and teamwork development sort of in the local environment. And then later on in the year, in March, we're usually just sort of building up to this. At the moment, are we sort of planning for this? But yeah, under the circumstances, it's not happening. But we usually go to the Lake District for 3 days. And that is our main residential field work, where we prepare you for your 4,000-word investigation. As I said, that's worth 20% of your final grade. And we do a whole range of different activities in urban and rural environments and coastal locations on the western side of the Lake District, and a location called Wasdale. And as Ian mentioned, that's one of your main case studies for the place unit as well. So we combine field work with a bit of the place unit as well. And that sort of brings us into the sort of summer term where we continue to prepare you and build you up for your coursework and data collection over the summer that you'll do independently.
Then we move on into the second year, and it's a unit that I know a lot of students quite enjoy, natural hazards, which we start the second year with, so good physical geography unit. Obviously, some hazards are familiar to you, but one that you've perhaps not studied very much might be wildfires, which is one that we have a look at. That is something that you might have heard a little bit about in the news over the last couple of years. Australia's had some serious wildfires, as has California. And it's interesting to think about, to what extent perhaps those are happening more frequently as a result of climate change. Another element of hazards that might be a little bit different to the way that you've done it at GCSE is we look at locations that experience multiple hazards. So we, recognize, for example, that, there's not much point in studying sort of earthquakes or volcanoes in isolation, because they don't happen in isolation on our planet. They happen in locations where people live. They happen in places where other hazards happen. So, for example, when Mount Pinatubo erupted at the same time a typhoon was taking place. And so that sort of all the rain from the typhoon got caught up with all the volcanic ash and debris creating lahars. And it was because of the combination of natural hazards that the Philippines suffered certain impacts. So, we want to take that into account and really recognize, sort of what's going on in relation to that. So hopefully that's a unit that a lot of people will enjoy.
A couple of questions there coming in. Sort of, do you have to do GCSE? We sort of, yes, it's useful, but you don't have to have done GCSE to be able to study A-level geography. Just a genuine interest in the world around us and the environment. Obviously, very topical at the moment. So no, you don't have to have done GCSE, but we will obviously look at your overall GCSEs, sort of in maths, English, and science. A good grade or a 4 above in English is obviously very useful. It's a very written-based subject, so that's kind of helpful. Sort of, yeah, the good question there about your sort of time at school being interrupted. Sort of, yeah, in terms of the way that we've sort of worked that this year, it's a bit more of a gradual and slow transition, spending more time on certain sort of vocabulary and key terminology in geography to make sure everybody's up to speed. I mean, obviously, one thing that sort of you may or may not be aware of, that sort of when students come into college from outside, lots of different sort of students have done different exam boards, and we kind of want to bring everybody up to a certain level. So we start off right at the very bottom and gradually work our way up in everything that we do.
I think it's also worth adding there as well that we provide a lot of scaffolding for each of the different question types. We provide assessment booklets, and at the beginning of all of those, there's clear guidance about how to set the different answers out, and we go through that and we train you up. So hopefully, you can come in with confidence that you're going to be successful in spite of the circumstances.
Yeah, grades in geography that are expected a 4 above. A 4 above. Obviously, the higher grade you get, the sort of more potential you are going to have to kind of get the higher grades at A level. Okay, careers wise, good question. Sort of geography is a very multidisciplinary subject. It has a huge number of skills that are sort of used in the workplace. You can write essays, you can debate, you can argue, you can use IT. You are going to show a massive amount of independence in terms of your 4,000 word investigation. You've got a wide knowledge of global issues, okay? So a huge number of skills, and you can get careers very specific to geography. You might be working, for example, the Environmental Agency. You might be working for a private hazard management organisation, looking at sort of, in this country, particularly issues to do with flooding, for example, and they're going to become more prominent as we move forward, and climate change sort of has much greater impacts. You may well be sort of working in the planning department in the local council.
I think it's worth adding, Mark, really, the question actually should be, what careers can't I do with geography?
Yeah.
Because as Mark said, there are so many different skills that you gain, and don't forget as well that ability to actually look at evidence, to interpret data as well. Good geographers aren't just literate, they're numerate as well. So you really are multi-skilled through doing geography, and it will help you go on to pretty much anything that you want to. In terms of another question that we have about, do geography and geology go well together? The simple answer to that is yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely,
we do have a number of students who do both of those subjects. They work well together. Geology, for example, supports the hazards unit. The difference between geography and geology is partly in the assessment style. There aren't any essays in geology, and there are more sort of practical lab style type assessments, whereas in geography, we tend to have a bit more evaluative stuff going on. We write the essays, and of course we do the individual report, and we go out and we collect all of the data for that. So there are perhaps the differences in the style of those courses, but yeah, they complement each other really well.
Yeah, I would just sort of like to add to that in terms of geography, geology. If you like your physical geography and you like your coasts and you like your sort of climate stuff, and sort of, if you like that side of geography, then geology, and you're maybe a little bit more scientific. Okay, if you're a little bit more scientific, then geology is a really good one to go with. Okay. In terms of entry requirements to the college overall, it's 5 grade 4s, including maths or English. Okay. So very accessible, I think, in terms of our overall entry requirements.
Worth saying in answer to our next question here, the course does have case studies in it. There's quite a number of them in each of the different units. We will normally recommend particular case studies because we know that they fit very well in terms of what the examiner is looking for, and we'll give you an opportunity therefore to sort of talk about relevant factors and processes that might be happening in a location, and often we'll sort of signpost key case studies that will allow you to make links as well. We often provide case studies that relate to specific resources that we know we've got, but one thing that we will also try and do is give you the opportunity to take those case studies further. So if you want to have a look at you know, sort of advanced elements of them, then we can give you the web links and things like that to you know, take it forward as well. So that's a good question there.
Yeah, lots of things coming in.
Yeah.
Biology and chemistry, yes.
Yes.
Again, sort of, yeah. I mean, geography goes with a wide range of different, wide range of subjects. Some students, as I say, that are a bit more scientific tend to do more science-based subjects. Those sort of students that are a bit more humanities-based like to do things like politics, history, and it kind of it cuts across both the sciences and the humanities. So yeah, biology and chemistry would be absolutely fine.
Yeah. The class sizes that we teach in the first year tend to be about sort of, you know, 17, 18, 19, 20 or so. It varies a little bit from group to group. They're big enough for us to do group work in, you know, good enough to get a sort of discussion going, works well in terms of having people sort of get together in pairs and threes for different styles of learning and so on. So hopefully, you know, the classes are at the optimum size really to help you to settle into the course and to do well. The college itself is quite a big college. You know, if we had everybody on site at one time, then we'd be getting on for around about 2,000 students, but that happens very rarely that actually everybody's on site at the same time. Okay, you know, for some people they think, oh, that sounds really big compared with the school that I've been to. You know, don't worry about that at all. You know, do see it as a bit of an opportunity and think about all the sort of potential new friends that you might actually be able to make through coming to QE and you know, doing the various subjects and activities that you can get involved in. So you know, it's a good place to be. Just going back to a question that's just come in now, just relating to what we were talking about earlier in relation to the course content. We mentioned one of the second year units, which was hazards, and yes, we do cover volcanoes as part of that. There are a couple of other second year units as well. One of them is called Global Systems and Governance. So just very quickly, you've got things to do there with sort of globalization, international trade organizations, trade in different commodities and so on, and access to markets. That's a part of that, along with the sort of more regulatory side that Mark tends to deliver.
Yeah, global governance is part of that very, very kind of interesting issue. One that I wasn't sort of fully aware of before I taught this particular unit, but it's kind of how do we govern the planet and global issues that cut across borders, like climate change, for example, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue that the planet faces, along with COVID, obviously. But sort of how do we manage that? How do we work together as a planet to overcome the issues related to climate change?
And in a way that links to your water and carbon unit as well.
Yeah, I also teach water and carbon, the basic sort of natural cycles of the planet. We look at the interrelationships between the water and the carbon cycle. Again, case studies in the water cycle, we do local drainage basin in the form of the Tees. And then in the carbon cycle, we look at a much bigger global biome, and that is the Amazon rainforest and the influence that it has regionally, but also obviously as a planetary kind of system as well. Okay.
So really sort of just to start summing up, you know, the course, as we say, it's half and half physical geography and human geography, 3 units in each of the year groups. We teach, as I say, sort of 2 different units simultaneously, just to keep things interesting as well, hopefully. And there is the coursework option where you actually get the opportunity to choose a topic of your choice that you want to investigate a little bit further. So that if you're, you know, a budding human geographer, that could be human geography related, or it could be physical geography related. It just sort of depends what your particular interest is.
Okay then, guys, I think we're coming to an end. I don't want to sort of chop anybody off, but very much thank you all for attending this evening. It's been lovely to speak to you, and we hope to see you sort of in the summer term, hopefully, for bridging. if COVID allows, and then obviously in September when you will enroll, hopefully. So hopefully that's been informative.
Please, please go to the website as well for the college. Do check out the sort of the application process. Do have a look at the geography section that you can access through that, and you know, have a look through at the subject site that we've built to give you a bit more of an indication. We welcome any questions. So if you do want to get in touch with either of us via email, you know, then please just contact the college and they can forward any queries on to us. But it's been great chatting with you tonight, and thanks very much for all of the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, apply online, really easy process.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.